Hi, everyone, and welcome back for another AdvisorShares AlphaNooner. Today, we're excited to welcome back Austin Zen-Hariri, Executive Director of the Texas Cannabis Collective, to get an insight and a check-in on the Texas cannabis reform, criminal justice, patient access, and how federal momentum could potentially make its way into the Lone Star State. So with all that said, Austin, thanks for joining. Really appreciate you making the time. I know it's busy right now.
Thank you, Mackenzie. It's always a great pleasure to be with the AdvisorShares team and to bring updates from the Lone Star State. Thank you for having me.
Of course, we appreciate the insight. Well, I figured a great place to start would actually be kind of just sort of a check-in on where we are in Texas today. What can you tell us about cannabis in Texas as we stand almost in May?
Okay, so where we're at now through the first quarter of the year, tomorrow's May 1st, and we are approximately less than a month, or right at about a month left in the legislative session in the state of Texas. And for those who may not be familiar with Texas politics, our state legislature meets once every 2 years for approximately 140 days. So typically middle of January to end of May, typically once every 2 years, right? So you can imagine with one of the biggest populations in the country, it's a very tight window for a lot of things to happen, not just cannabis, but really any legislation that's trying to make its way through that gauntlet. It almost certainly faces a challenge. So that's where we're at right now. As far as the legislative process is concerned, we have several, as far as answering where we're at considering cannabis, I have to be completely honest. It feels like we are in a full-on assault on cannabis in the state of Texas. And that's not just from, the well-known SB3 hemp ban bill that seeks to ban not just all hemp THC, but really all hemp cannabinoids that aren't pure isolate CBD or CBG. And so to further extrapolate on that, we've done several decriminalization measures through Home Rule Ballot Initiative, which is a tool we have here in the state of Texas at the local level. And so we've utilized that through our partners, Ground Game Texas, and we've done that in Austin, Dallas, Killeen, San Marcos, at 9 different jurisdictions here in the state of Texas that have overwhelmingly, those populaces have voted to decriminalize. And when I say decriminalize, I mean it's a pretty radical version of decriminalization. I know that term gets kind of thrown around a lot, but up to 4 ounces of marijuana possession, no arrest, no citation. Police are not allowed to use smell as probable cause. The city can't even test the evidence to see if it's a legal hemp compliant product or illegal marijuana, right? So those have all passed with flying colors, and as of recently, we had 4 different jurisdictions that had been sued by the Attorney General, Ken Paxton. And in 2 of those, Travis County and Hayes County, San Marcos and Austin, respectively, the Attorney General has lost. It is only until recently, I would say about a week ago, that on appeals, the 15th Court of Appeals ruled that the San Marcos ballot initiative violated state law, right? State drug law. And so because of that, the initiative had been overturned, and that looks like that will set precedent really for the rest of the other 8 jurisdictions that have still pending litigation. In some have already foregone that litigation and settled with the Attorney General. But on top of that, so we've lost that. It looks like our decriminalization measures are going to be overturned by the state of Texas. But not just that, we've had legislation filed in the House and the Senate that would restrict local jurisdictions from being able to do these ballot measures in the future. And that jurisdiction would be handed over to the Attorney General if you felt like a ballot initiative or a city ordinance was in violation of state law in whatever manner, he could strike it down, or even a ballot initiative that was up for consideration. He could strike that down. And so those bills are still kind of pending in committee. The Senate has passed theirs. The Senate has been pretty aggressive. Obviously, roping back in, Senate Bill 3. This is the total hemp ban bill. The House version is HB 28, which is not a complete hemp ban bill. It is mostly a ban bill, but has a carve out for low dose THC hemp beverages. Think 10 milligrams, I think, is the max. And that would be put under the jurisdiction of the Texas Alcoholic Beverage Commission and would follow the 3-tier system that is already imposed under Texas law there. So, and I think that the intent behind that is because Texas Alcoholic Beverage Commission has a far more enforcement budget, and they just have, they're already well funded and well strategized in being able to handle non-compliant alcohol violators. And so the idea is, because that enforcement mechanism is already built in, transferring that from DSHS over to TABC would be more beneficial. We don't think it's that way because we don't think TABC already handles handles alcohol very well. So the fact that we're going to give them cannabis too, just doesn't
rough. That's fair.
make a lot of sense.
Does that any of that come down to? I know there's been a big debate over hemp versus cannabis, and I think a lot of the times hemp is something that has been easily accessible for the states that have really had strong opposition to allowing cannabis. To people want cannabis, so they're going to try to find a way to get it, and ultimately hemp is kind of a form that they can find it in. Does any of the beverage element come down to being able to control? You're less likely to find sort of tainted potentially or dangerous. I know that's something that gets thrown in with some of the hemp, just because there could be a range of actors in terms of people who are putting out hemp derived kind of cannabis products, versus if you are canning and sort of have a process in place. Does that come into play at all? Is that any of the?
Sure. Yeah, I think from a regulatory standpoint, I think that what's crazy is that the hemp beverage is actually late to the game in the hemp space here in Texas, right? So in 2019, once we started seeing, Delta 8 and other isomerized cannabinoids emerge into the space, we started seeing things in the products of like gummies and flower products and vaporizers and things of that nature, and that the actual beverage segment didn't really materialize until, I would say, maybe 2 years ago. Is when it really took hold, and so because of that already established market that already knows how to manufacture and has those channels and the legitimacy, as far as an industry is concerned, you started seeing just rapid mobilization of these products, and in a very refined manner that was, whether we could debate compliance or not, but looks for the most part compliant.
Sure.
And so because of that, you've begun to see, and this is what's funny, is that, we talk a lot about the small hemp shops all across the state, the 8,000 retailers or whatnot that exist across the state. Let me be very clear about this. The biggest proliferator of intoxicating hemp products in the state of Texas, hands down, not even close, is the mass liquor chains, Specs, Total Wine, that exist here throughout the metro areas of Texas. These guys are doing so much turnover and making so much money, hence why they're so actively involved in making sure that there's a beverage carve out. And this is no secret, because we saw the Texas Beer Alliance endorse SB3, HB 28, which is the preferred bill that has the beverage carve out. Is clearly the expert testimony that was brought in was brought in from an alternative beverage organization that works nationally on this issue. So they know there's a lot of money that's being made on the beverage sector side. And so the acceptance of beverages has been kind of, it's been kind of the eye opener in how I would say a lot of Texans are getting most of their access to cannabis products, or new consumers that are coming into the market are coming in through the beverage sector, because they're not just being sold in these massive liquor retail chains. They're also being sold in just about every bar throughout the state. Here in my community in Fort Worth, every bar you go to probably has some variant of a low dose beverage, 5%, or I'm sorry, 5 milligram, 10 milligram THC beverage. So yeah, I think that the beverage sector has really played a huge part in kind of bringing this normalization into of cannabis into the space. But at the same time, even it is facing a massive threat from the lieutenant governor.
Yeah, which again is super interesting to me, because I do think it makes sense for people to dabble and kind of put a toe in if it's a form factor that they recognize. You're at a bar, you're choosing between a seltzer or, a cannabis related drink. And I think that makes it easier and more approachable for people. And I feel like on top of, the different, proposals that you've had where it's been decriminalized in certain cities, you'd think that there would be sort of that mounting momentum that, hey, people like this, people want this. Is the disconnect between sort of just the politicians and its people? How does that get so out of whack ultimately? Do you have any thoughts?
Well, again, let me be very frank and clear about this. This is one of the most unpopular priorities in the state, hands down. I've been doing work since the beginning of, really since the 2024 November elections. Once we knew who the players were going to be at the state legislature, we immediately began work reaching out and contacting members and members' offices, and started kind of having a conversation, because we already knew that the lieutenant governor was likely to come after cannabis. The Senate has done so in 2023, and also tried during 2021. So we knew that it was going to be something on the agenda. We didn't know it was going to be one of the highest level priorities of the lieutenant governor. That was a shock to everybody, and including everybody in the legislature, because this is one of the most unpopular bills. Nobody really wants to touch it. This is not a priority of the Texas GOP. This was not a priority for anybody in the Democratic Party. We've gone through the polling, and nobody in the polling wants it. The governor, even as early as today, the governor had a meeting with the lieutenant governor and the Speaker of the House and talked about their priorities. Hemp ban is not mentioned. So this is not a priority for anybody other than the lieutenant governor. And
Does that give you any confidence that it could be, as quickly as it kind of came into importance or priority, that it could be basically reversed from there, even against, I feel like, the backdrop of, on the federal side, the administration has been much more, at least recently, vocal about at least cannabis in general. So that seems surprising to so much diverge from sort of the popular party elements.
Yes, unfortunately, the lieutenant governor is the most powerful politician in the state of Texas from a legislative standpoint. He's the president of the Senate, so he really controls all the legislation that goes through the Senate. So, and the lieutenant governor knows this. That's why he's proudly running again for a fourth term in a row. This is why, this man is, he's always vehemently been against cannabis. So let's just take hemp out of the space. He's talking, the arguments that he's using for banning hemp and hemp THC products are the same reasons that he used in 2017 and 2019 for not wanting to radically expand medical marijuana. Oh, because people will give it to the kids. And it's just, the lieutenant governor has never been a fan of this. He truly sees it as evil, like satanic almost. I don't know what other terms to use it. Like, he really thinks that this is nefarious, in that anybody associated with cannabis, hemp, medical marijuana, recreational marijuana, these are like very bad people. And so it's really just getting past one guy, because the people, most of the ledge, even the governor is far more progressive on this issue than him. And unfortunately, he's so powerful, he'll probably get reelected as the incumbent for the Republican Party in the primaries, and he will likely win re-election in 2026, which means that cannabis will continue to be on the chopping block potentially until 2030 in the state of Texas.
That is horrible. Again, I think it's such a pressing issue for people who are currently living in Texas, and to have somebody who it sounds like is, buying it in all the wrong ways to sort of the stigma around cannabis. Horrible. That's terrible. What are you working on to try to push against it, or can you, or is it still just sort of trying to get buy-in from Texans to, at least call and contact their people to try to, make it known what's
That's it. Yeah, definitely. We encourage everybody to call their representatives, call their senators, keep blowing that phone up every single day. Call them and talk to them and let them know how you feel. For us, I think having relationships with legislators in the Capitol is very important. We've been doing this work for 10 years, right? So a lot of these people have been, we have a ton of freshman members this session, but a lot of the members that we're working with, especially in House State Affairs, a lot of these guys have been here for quite some time and are not part of what I call the grassroots Republican Party that is gung ho to be subservient to the lieutenant governor. These guys, what we're hoping for is that there's enough chaos politically, which there is. There's almost there's a burgeoning civil war in the Republican Party here in the state of Texas. Obviously, Republicans overwhelmingly rule the state legislature. They've ruled the state of Texas now for well over 30 years. And so because of that, there's this civil war that exists here. What I would say the moderate traditionalists versus these grassroots, hardcore new Republicans that are really, it's either bow down to the ring or we're going to come and attack you. Throat. And so because of that dynamic, we're hoping that we'll be able to utilize some of that chaos to be able to hopefully kill both of those bills, because we don't like the idea of just the beverage sector, especially being run by TABC. I don't think that cannabis belongs in the purview of an alcoholic beverage commission. Like I said, TABC is already a mess. They tried to sunset TABC in 2019. Like, even the state of Texas doesn't really trust these guys. So, we don't like particularly either bill to come out, and we really don't appreciate the fact that the lieutenant governor is using compassionate use, our medical marijuana program, as a carrot by which to pass the ban. In that we unfortunately feel that the lieutenant governor is dangling and encouraging people to support the hemp ban in hopes that they will expand compassionate use in the state of Texas. But the lieutenant governor cannot be trusted on this. He didn't do it in 2023 when there was ample opportunity to expand compassionate use. We've been begging for expansion to compassionate use for 10 years now, since they passed the bill in 2015. And they've done nothing but baby step and hurt patients. They've not provided access. This isn't my words. This is DPS's words, Department of Public Safety, who oversees compassionate use. That is a failure of a program. It doesn't provide for all Texas. It's the most restrictive program in the country. It is almost insolvent because the regulations on the program are so absurd that there is no way anybody can conduct business in it and make a profit. It is the worst program in the country. It needs to either completely collapse and be redone, or it needs the most extreme radical expansion that has ever been brought forth in a medical marijuana program. We have two neighbors, all right? Pick one. You want the liberal one in New Mexico, or do you want the super MAGA conservative one in Oklahoma? They have the most robust medical marijuana programs in the country, where you can have access to whole plant cannabis with full home grow rights. The state of Texas treats cannabis, medical marijuana cannabis, like it's petroleum, like, or, I'm sorry, like it's plutonium, like it's radioactive material, right? And so because of that, we have the worst program in the country. And the lieutenant governor is saying, oh yeah, well, I will give you this much moderate expansion if you will just ban all hemp. Which is where everybody in the state of Texas is getting cannabis access. Well, I wouldn't say everybody. Everybody near New Mexico is just going to New Mexico.
Sure.
And we're literally fueling the entirety of the New Mexico recreational marijuana program. And so, it's very difficult. I can't. The lieutenant governor is really pitting us all against each other, making us choose between this and that, and he just wants to see chaos. And in my theory, he wants to destroy the entirety of the hemp program and not expand medical marijuana and let it become insolvent, and therefore he gets his way in having no cannabis in the state of Texas whatsoever.
It's so strange, I think, to have such a contentious issue for something that I think is generally so popular and supported, especially, again, depending on how different states or different people feel about the recreational side, because I know people have different thoughts and feelings on that. But on the medical side, especially, just because I think that is something that is normally targeted. Veterans definitely take advantage of that. Elderly people can take advantage of that, or just sick people, kids. I know there's the whole range of people that kind of really need that. So that's, I'm sure, a battle you've been fighting for a long time to get people access to what feels like a better tool and option. And that has to be incredibly frustrating. So I would say, definitely appreciate you continuing to do the work, despite it being frustrating, I'm sure at times, but, it requires that time and patience and effort to get done. So, that's important. I think you had said, I was looking, I think, at a tweet or something, and you had said, I think one of the most dangerous parts of cannabis is being caught with it in Texas versus actually using it. What are the real, like, today consequences of the current system if it continues to go the way that it's going, or if we kind of remain where we are even now?
Well, just for context, Texas has El Paso, 1915, is the first city in the United States that outlawed cannabis. And really not too long after that, Texas really began to build around that ordinance. And so for 110 years, we've been under the system of incurring penalties and criminalizing people for possessing hemp cannabis, whatever you want to call it. And we haven't, before 1975, possession of any amount was a life sentence in prison. Thankfully, somebody in 1975 came about their right mind, and created the system that we have today, which is a tiered system of possession that is actually separate from controlled substances, right? So it has its own special category, and it's still criminalized. So under 4 ounces of possession is a misdemeanor. Between under 2 ounces is a class B, and between 2 and 4 ounces is a class A. And then anything over that is a state jail felony. And here's where it really becomes serious, in that is just for flower, right? So any amount of concentrate, brownies, edible, vaporizer, dabs, whatever however however you're carrying that,
Mhm.
that is an automatic felony for any amount. It doesn't matter if you have 5 pounds or if you have like 0.001 gram. Like, that's a felony. And what they do is when they get that contraband, they don't just analyze the amount of suspected THC that exists within the product. What they'll do is they'll just weigh the entire product, right? So if you have a pound of brownies that has, I don't know, maybe 25 milligrams or 50 milligrams of THC, they're going to weigh the whole pound of brownie. That's what you're getting the charge for, is a whole pound. Or if you have, like, I don't know, a gram of wax in a vaporizer, they're not going to consider that. They're considering the whole weight of the vaporizer, metal and all, glass, everything. So, and so we have people that, are getting $100,000 bonds for, penalty controlled substance, possession charges. So, like, it's absolutely ridiculous. And these laws have existed for 50 years, and we haven't had a penalty reduction bill happen in 50 years. And what's most troubling about that is that we've had penalty reduction bills heard 2015, 2017, 2019, 21, 23. So really, we've had a lot of progress of hearing bills heard in committee and having this discussion. And here in 2025, zero. They don't even want to talk about it. We're talking about banning all THC. We're talking about banning all cannabis. And we really are talking about the total shutdown of cannabis, whether it's hemp, whether it's medical marijuana, doesn't matter. Everything is under threat right now.
That's horrible. Again, definitely seems like an untenable situation. I know you guys are doing a ton of work at the Texas Cannabis Collective to try to push things forward, even when things look very dire and look very tough. What would you say is kind of the most important thing that you're working on right now generally, and then how people can kind of help get behind you guys to try to help get something back on the Texas side for the people who live there?
Yeah, I guess for right now, we just don't want to see. We typically work from a criminal justice standpoint, and so we don't want to see people going to jail anymore. Texas will arrest more people for low-level marijuana possession or cannabis possession than anywhere in the country. That's guaranteed. And that's simply from the fact that hell, it's legal in more than like half the country, and medically legal to a pretty progressive degree in the other half, and that it's really Texas that is literally lagging the rest of the country behind. So we don't want to see people go to jail anymore. And unfortunately, so when we talk about Senate Bill 3, we absolutely support a lot of what is in that bill, right? Age restrictions, compliance packaging, testing standards, zoning standards, all of these things. We don't want like knockoff like brands
Safe
that
tested.
are chips,
Yeah.
Trips Ahoy and all of these like crazy like knockoff like bogus
Yeah. For kids
THC
kind of as
brands
well.
and stuff that are coming out. We don't want to see any of that.
Of course.
What we want to see is we want to see people getting access to quality cannabis products without the fear of getting arrested and going to jail. And right now, I can tell you that the compassionate use program does not provide that to a degree that provides access to the entire state, and that the hemp program, for the most part, does. Although the problem is that it's so loose that many bad characters have gotten into the space, and that is a problem, and that if the state of Texas will invest in Department of State Health Services and Department of Agriculture to really rein in a lot of that problem by investing in inspectors and inspections and heavily finding and or eradicating bad players in the space, I think that we can really start talking about cannabis being accepted through the hemp space, but maybe broadly encompassing whole plant moving into the future. You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
Because right now the mantra is that, oh, I will never legalize marijuana I'll never legalize marijuana in Texas. It's almost every Republican in the state. I will never legalize marijuana in Texas. But hemp, I like hemp. My constituents like hemp. Hemp sounds kind of cool. I know I hate my cancer. My buddy's got cancer, and he uses hemp products, and it makes him feel better. So
Interesting.
if we just got to call it something different, I'm ready to get on board with it. I don't want to see bad players in the space. I don't want to see non-compliance. I don't want to see kids getting access to it. I don't want to see irresponsible use. These aren't things that we're advocating for. What we're advocating for is we want to stop seeing people going to jail for cannabis possession. And SB3, as it currently sits, will send people to jail who are consuming full spectrum CBD oil. And so that is unacceptable. And some people are like, oh, well, you should take the trade off. There's so much toxic poison that they're putting out there that, we just need to shut it all down. And I'm sorry, I will never advocate for somebody going to jail for even broad spectrum CBD oil. We're not even you take all the THC out of it. They want to send people to jail for CBN products, for CBC products, for products that are non-psychoactive. And that is just not acceptable in our books. And that's what SB3 does. That's to a degree, that's what HB 28 does. And so we are in opposition to both of these bills simply from the criminal justice standpoint. Now, if there are mechanisms in there to make sure that only nefarious characters are being dealt with, then we would love to revisit that and have those conversations. But that's not what this does. It's total shutdown. It's all it's going to do is send more people to jail, send more people to prison. It's going to put everybody into the biggest black market into the country, and it's only going to make the problem worse. So,
in absence, I think, of a safe, regulated market, that is often what happens. I think we've seen that even with alcohol during Prohibition. I think that's where you're getting the bathtub gin and things that can be harmful to people ultimately. So again, hopefully we see that. As a final thought, I do want to make sure we're pointing people kind of to following your work, but just wondering on a federal level, if anything on that backdrop is kind of affecting things. I know I had seen recently the Clean Slate Act kind of being introduced, so kind of a focus in on at least relieving and kind of undoing some of the harms. But I know also even, some bills moving forward or attempting to kind of embrace cannabis, whether that's States 2.0 or the Prepare Act. Does that have any influence, or Texas is still going to do its own thing?
Texas is always going to do its own thing. And what President Trump has been very, very vocal about is he wants to leave it to the states.
Yeah.
Well, that sucks for us.
Yeah.
It's great for Massachusetts. It's great for Ohio and Maine and Washington and Michigan, and pretty much everywhere else, but it sucks for the state of Texas. So, we do love seeing things like the States Act. I definitely we need safe banking more than anything, because safe banking, believe it or not, actually encapsulates the hemp industry as well, because there is even though hemp is what they call federally legal, you're still getting a bunch of pushback from banks and all kinds of other credit processors and loans and access to capital and all of those things, even just within the hemp space, just because of its being tangent to marijuana, right? So and we, even as a nonprofit, we've experienced it because our cannabis is in our name, right? So it's federally, we always keep an eye out on what's going on there. The fact that today we got to see some, I believe it's confirmation hearing for DEA. Am I correct on that?
Yep.
And that one of the questions asked was about cannabis, and they said it was one of his first priorities. So
Highest priority, yeah.
you know, it's encouraging to hear those things, but Kinsey, you've been obviously working in cannabis for quite some time. You can only take what the DEA says at face value.
Yeah.
And so for us right now, it's just wait and see approach, because, you know, we've been waiting since the first Obama administration to see change. So second Obama administration, Trump administration, Biden administration, second Trump administration, right? So like, when is it going to come down? We're not waiting on the feds in Texas. Right now, we're just trying to hold the line to hopefully make it to 2027 and through another election season. Hopefully we already know we're going to get a new attorney general because Ken Paxton is running for U.S. Senator against Senator John Cornyn. So we know we're going to get a new attorney general, and that race looks like it's going to get a little chippy. We could have a new lieutenant governor. That would be awesome.
Sure.
I don't see too many scenarios where that plays out, but you know, there's a lot of people moving to Texas, one of the fastest growing states in the country. You know, our elections are I think are going to be changing over the next 5 to 10 years, with as many people from across the country and really across the world that are moving to Texas. So, you know, right now for us, I think it's just focus on our state and try to keep the conversation alive, try to keep them from banning everything and shutting everything down, and have, you know, constructive conversations, continue to call out the bad actors, continue to, you know, look for better ways to work within this sphere and provide solid feedback for regulators and support all of the guys who are really trying to do it the right way. But like we're just trying to like staying alive, right? That's all we're trying to do out here.
It's a tough fight. I feel like it's a long fight, but again, an important fight. So again, I appreciate you really taking the time to be able to do that.
Real quick. Yeah. Let me drop. I know you asked me.
Yeah.
You follow us at txcannaco.com, txcannaco.com. We do, you know, we have some updates and news articles and stuff there. That's really just kind of our landing page. But if you really want to follow and support our work, we just encourage you, follow us on X at txcannaco, follow us on Instagram at TX Cannabis Collective. We have probably the largest social media content sites in cannabis in the state of Texas. You know, we're doing, I don't know, monthly on average between each social media site, 750 to 1 million views, you know, on X, Instagram, Facebook, whatever. So, you know, we're definitely reaching the masses, and we have a lot of resources there that will be able to help people get them engaged. You know, we know a lot of people are really engaged on social media, so it's a really good way for them to kind of stay up to date with what's happening daily.
Yep, that's fantastic. I was going to definitely make sure you got that in, because I wanted to make sure people can follow, especially, you know, if you're in Texas or if you just care about cannabis and you're outside of Texas. Definitely important to stay kind of in tune with what you guys are doing. So that's fantastic. Awesome. The time, really appreciate it. And hopefully we'll catch you soon.
Thank you, Mackenzie. Always appreciate you. AdvisorShares, the whole team. Look forward to talking to you guys again soon.
That sounds good. All right. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Before investing, carefully consider the investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses found in the prospectus, available at AdvisorShares.com.